In the steps we have coordinated with the side of the US, we've managed to keep extremely sensitive points on the table, including the full release of all Ukrainian prisoners of war under the all for all formula, and civilians, and the complete return of Ukrainian children abducted by Russia. These are important steps, but to achieve real peace, more is needed.
In Geneva, diplomacy just took a dramatic turn. After weeks of uproar over U.S. President Donald Trump's controversial 28-point peace plan, a proposal Kyiv warned would weaken Ukraine and reward Moscow, Europe has now placed its own counterproposal on the table. And it fundamentally rewrites Washington's draft. European officials say the Geneva talks were progress, but only part of the story. Because behind closed doors, Britain, France, and Germany, the so-called E3, handed Washington a line-by-line rewrite of Trump's blueprint, dramatically altering some of the most contentious points. Finnish President Alexander Stubb said the talks were a step forward, but stressed major disagreements remain. And those disagreements are exactly why Europe drafted its counterplan. At the heart of the dispute is Washington's original demand that Ukraine hand over territory, scale down its army, and permanently abandon NATO membership. Concessions Europeans called unacceptable. Kyiv, facing brutal pressure on the front lines and political turmoil at home, cautiously welcomed Geneva's reinvigorated diplomacy. President Zelensky said the talks gave Ukraine very good signs that the worst elements of the Trump plan may now be removed. Europe's counter-proposal does just that, stripping out entire sections of the US draft and inserting tougher guarantees for Ukraine. What Europe wants changed in Trump's plan. Point 1. Ukraine's sovereignty reconfirmed. Point 5. Security guarantees strengthened. Point 7. NATO membership clarified, not denied, but subject to consensus. Point 10. US security guarantee mirroring Article 5, with automatic sanctions triggered if Russia violates the deal. Point 14. Russia must compensate Ukraine for reconstruction before its frozen assets are released. And perhaps the biggest shift, Europe deleted the US point limiting NATO's future expansion. Brussels calls this a decisive success.
Of the European, the counterplan of the Europeans.
I'm not aware counterplan.
Is Geneva the home of the negotiations?
Germany's foreign minister said Secretary of State Marco Rubio helped reshape the plan so it becomes acceptable to both Europe and Kyiv, removing what he called the most problematic provisions. Russian officials claim they still haven't seen the newly amended text, but say they remain open to talks. Turkey, meanwhile, is positioning itself as a third mediator, with President Erdogan speaking to Vladimir Putin to revive stalled Black Sea grain deals. A joint US-Ukraine statement after the meeting praised Trump's involvement, language clearly designed to smooth over political tensions after the president's criticism of Zelensky just days earlier. Both sides said the new framework aligns positions, but the final agreement will be decided personally by Trump and Zelensky. For now, Europe's counter-proposal marks the strongest pushback yet to Trump's original plan, shifting the peace talks away from concessions to Moscow and closer to Ukraine's long-term security. But with Russia waiting, Ukraine struggling, and the war approaching year 4, the road from Geneva to any real ceasefire remains long and volatile.